Hello. Welcome to episode 26 of the Blind Sighted podcast. Today we're talking about boundaries, and maybe the first thought that comes is sports, because it does to me. Sports with boundaries makes for a good game, and life with boundaries also makes for a good game. And my name is Charlie Collins. I am a coach, a speaker, an author, and a podcaster. And that's about it for now.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brenda. I'm the founder of TimeForAttend.com. We are a coaching service. And what we do is we help people change their conditioned thinking by inventorying disturbances and shining a new light on them so they can see things differently and experience more peace and freedom and joy in their lives. And we love doing this, and we love working with people. And I'm excited to talk about boundaries. Very excited. I didn't know what they were for a long time, or I was confused about what they were, but we're going to clear all that up today. So
yeah, me too. It's like, oh, well, you got to set boundaries. I'm like, oh, whatever. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't like it. Because I have a boundary that I don't want to learn anything. I haven't suffered enough, so shut up. And and I was thinking first, like, gosh, imagine watching a football game or a hockey where there's no wall around the ice. It just continues. And they just skate. They start in like Connecticut and then they're skating and they're in Texas still. It would make no sense. There would be in that group, there would be dominant people that take advantage and walk all over those who want to play within a certain frame of mind and on a field, the game of life. And I was thinking, wow, that would be hilarious if you could just throw a pass in football and there's no boundary. You can just catch it like in the crowd and it's okay. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't add up. It wouldn't be as thrilling. And I think, and then when I learned, Brenda, that I need to set personal and work boundaries, I'm like, okay, well, what flag goes up in the air? So we'll talk like what do we notice within our day that maybe I need to take a look at some personal boundaries or work boundaries? Well, one is I say yes to everything. I don't seem to have the ability to say no. Or I do. I think I want to say no, but I don't say no because I want to be helpful. I want to help those people succeed. And I want to really make sure they like me and I do a good job. I want to help them be happy. I'm taking on the role of their power, of, doing for them. I'm not noticing that my needs are just as important as other people's needs. That I'm giving of myself, even though there's times it doesn't work for me. I don't feel good about it, but I pretend that it's okay. So if I'm a yes man, that was one of mine. And when we become that person, they do ask more of us, whether it's family, friends, and especially the work environment. They notice that we're the yes person and we kind of take on things because, God forbid, we said that other scarier word, no. But wow, what I learned from learning that the way I was doing it was creating friction, was creating resentment, I was tired. I didn't understand why I'm doing so much. I'm doing for others, but I'm exhausted. I'm burned out. I don't get why this isn't working. And then I started to learn about boundaries.
Me too, Charlie. You started out by talking about sports. And what would it look like if there weren't any boundaries in sports? And, the first thing that popped into my head was people would get hurt. People would get hurt. And that's what happens when we don't set personal boundaries. Other people get hurt and we get hurt ourselves. We hurt ourselves by not setting boundaries. And I think the workplace is a really good place to start. And I suffer from some of the same, I want to say, squishy boundaries when it comes to, exercising self-care in the work environment, saying yes because the validation feels good. Oh, you did a good job. Oh, I'm always the one who solves all the problems. And so that validation of being special and feeling important and making the boss happy and all of that feel good stuff really can backfire because number one, I start to become dependent on that. And number two, I'm not able to set boundaries or say no because I'm so used to saying yes. And then exactly what you said happens, which is resentment starts to ensue for me. I'm like, they just keep giving me more and more and more and more to do that isn't even part of my job or the job that I was hired to do. And I created this environment by not setting boundaries that I'm now resentful at them for. And it's really, I'm the only one that can set the boundaries for myself. They're not going to set any boundaries for myself. I learned a long time ago, and this is human nature. This isn't a judgment on other people. People will take as much as you're willing to give. They just will. That's human nature. So if you're going to give, they're going to keep taking. And so the boundaries are really important to set if you want to experience peace of mind and freedom and peace and joy personally and in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, if you cherish well-being and living a life of values and this peace of mind, well, you got to create a structure because it doesn't happen automatically.
No.
Like you said, and there's people that like to manipulate. And maybe they have their own thing. So this isn't that they intentionally, maybe some do, but some just know the weakest link in the chain is my go-to because they're part of the chain, they're holding it together, and they don't say no. And I might say, I really want to get this done by the end of the day, but my dog's paw is hurting, and and that's a manipulation tactic where the person is sensitive in that area. Oh, it's okay, I'll take it on. I knew that was going to happen, but I need to, I think it's okay because they say yes, they do a good job, they don't complain usually. But then I find out they are complaining because I was, but not to the person,
right?
Not to the, I was off doing it to others. Like, this sucks. This guy's a jerk. They are. And really, just hold up a mirror. Who's the baby in this whole thing? Me. Because I'm not putting my foot down saying no. And here's why. No. I walked into the office of a gal that worked at my Vision Dynamics, my company, and she was a yes gal. And but finally she must have read a book. She learned about boundaries, and she said, well, hold on, before I take on what you're asking me to do, we've already agreed upon project A, B, and C, and each of these have a deadline, and I'm moving towards that, and this week is busy. So if you want me to take on project new and help you out on this, that means the other stuff's going to get placed on hold, and I'm not going to meet the deadlines. So if you're okay with that, then I'll allow this. I will take this on. And she was explaining a way of me to understand that I'm breaking her boundaries. I am not respecting what we've already committed to. And I'm not knowing that. I'm not seeing that. She helped me see it. And I went, huh. And then I thought, do I like when people come and just blah on me when I'm in the middle of doing? No, I don't. But I get it. They are not able to solve or do or finish something, and they're stuck and they need me to help. But there is a better way. And through creating boundaries and talking things out and showing self-respect, things got a lot better.
That's a really good example, Charlie. And when it comes to work, there's a couple of things I think that kind of trigger the inability to set boundaries. One is financial insecurity, right? They're paying me, I should do whatever they ask me to do because they're paying me, or they're paying me well, and I'm dependent on that income, so I'm not going to do anything to rock the boat, right? That's one reason why in the past I wouldn't set boundaries when it came to work, because I had tremendous fear about losing my job. It's old conditioned thinking and trauma from when my dad fired me from my job when I was actually a freshman in college, right? And I carry that trauma. I carried it into many jobs, and I had a really hard time setting boundaries because I was carrying around that trauma. And through doing the work, got rid of it. And it's a lot better now. It creeps up now and then. But so financial insecurity is a reason why people won't set boundaries. Needing the validation is why people won't set boundaries. And just what you said, like, what are they going to think of me? What are they going to think of me if I'm not like the super achiever here? I don't know about you, but I was always a super achiever because of the validation that came with it, and I sacrificed a lot to be a super achiever. And then when I started practicing boundaries, Charlie, when I actually started saying no, or I can't do that right now, or just saying no, and I wasn't the super achiever, guess what? The world kept spinning. I didn't lose my job, right? People stopped coming to me with every little thing. One of the things that I did as a boundary, because a boundary doesn't always have to be saying to an individual to their face, this is not the way it's going to work. Like, one of the things I did is I created a knowledge base. So, because the same people would come to me with the same question every other day. So what I did instead is I built a knowledge base, and I said, I put an article out there, and I sent it out to the company. Here's the article. If you have, if this question comes up, go read this article. And I started doing that years ago. So now the database is full of how to do things on your own, which has helped me tremendously in my job. And for me, I call that a soft boundary.
I call it Brenda's Get It Done Wiki.
Get it done yourself.
Yeah. So, and that's awesome, because when I worked for a company called New England Tennis, and it was net. It was always net on the van. We pulled into this Johnny's Farm Market to say hello a lot, and he'd say, it's the gang from No Education Tennis.
Oh, no.
And it was because it was true. There were convicts, and it was hard labor work, but I loved it for some reason. But I realized I needed to get in there earlier. I'm legally blind. And if I showed up at the minute, you had to get the van packed and boom, learn where we're going. We're resurfacing 8 tennis courts. You had to bring the tapes, the nails, the hard true, the brooms, the levelers, all the things. I would be kind of flustered in the morning because they could just look around and grab things. I couldn't. So I felt weird in that. And people would be doing for me and all. So I started going in 30 minutes early. But before I left at night, I didn't have to announce this. I didn't need anybody to change in the company. It was a personal boundary. It was a choice. It was a decision. It was discipline. But really, creating a boundary involves that to me. It's not easy. It's a change. It's a new way of thinking to get a different result. And I went in 30, but before I left, I said, hey, where are we going tomorrow? And the owner would say, tomorrow we're going to Easton, Connecticut. We got, 5 green heart true and 2 red clays we're doing. And, and the crew's going to be this and that. And I said, okay, now I know what I need. So I would come in the morning, and I started setting up things and getting ready so I could then just help load the van instead of running around looking for things. But I noticed I started doing this, and the owner or somebody would be there, and they would say, look at this. I have somebody I can dump some things on. Like, hey, now that you're here early, would you mind? I said, well, there's 2 things. I haven't punched in yet. I'm doing this to improve how I approach the day. And secondly, no, I won't do anything else except what I need to do to succeed throughout this day today for your freaking company. I didn't say that, and he said, well, here, let me come back at that. You continue to come in like you're doing, but you punch in. You deserve to get paid for this initiative, this type of thinking. We don't see that a lot around here. and that felt, now I didn't know, Brenda, back then, This was in the 80s. I didn't know I was doing boundary work. I didn't know what I was doing. I was thinking, how can I make it easier on me so I can, because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like sighted people. I wanted to be able to show up and produce like they could all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is unique for a lot of people to be able to do that. That's a unique approach, what you just talked about. The other thing about setting work boundaries, Charlie, is people don't like change. People don't like change. And one of the things I've discovered, because we want to talk about different boundaries today. We don't want to spend the whole podcast on work. So I want to wrap my work experience up with this. In setting work boundaries, and I've worked for some really big companies. I was trained in IT, so it was an experience to work in IT. And in setting work boundaries, if I would set a boundary and my employer would continue to violate the boundary, in other words, say, I'm going to not change their behavior after setting the boundary, because I get this question a lot in coaching too. Well, what if I set a boundary and they don't respect it? Well, then there's another decision that needs to be made. And that decision that needs to be made for me was, is this the right environment for me? Am I in the right company?
Yep.
Because that is not a company where I can thrive, where I'm not respected and my boundaries are not respected. And of course, you have to check and make sure that your boundaries are reasonable. Like, one of my hard stops is, I'll give you 8 hours. That's it. I have a full, rich life that I lead outside of this work that I'm doing for this particular company. Outside of those 8 hours are mine. And I choose what I do with that time. You don't get to dictate what I do with that time. And if that boundary isn't able to be respected, then that might not be the right environment for me. And what I found is that there's always another opportunity. When one door closes, another one will always open. You may have to wait in the hallway for a little while, but it does open. I trust 100% that the universe will bring into my awareness and into my experience that which is for my highest good.
Yeah, I like that, because personal boundaries, family, friends, relatives, places. If you go to, you're in the Knights of Columbus, and you're in 12-step groups and all that. The boundaries are necessary. And it's like, I don't need to announce. I don't need to. I come and go. I do. But I know my limits. I know where I start to get irritable, maybe a little discontented, and I want to run the show. I want to fix things.
Yeah.
I want people to act differently. I want you to shut it, and I know I have now crossed my line. And we all have a threshold, right?
Yes.
We have a good friend, Eve. And Eve taught me about the bar. And not the one that I don't go into anymore. Not the one that I used to go to solve my no boundary life issues, and my resentment, and my low self-esteem, and my waves of self-pity and depression. That was the bar I went to ease that pain. But no, I'm talking about the bar of life. Like I think of a pole vault or a high, we just had the Olympics, and I pole vaulted in high school, and I stunk. I did it because it was the easiest sport to do. And but anyway, I think about the bar. And as I was sharing and Eve reminded me that I set the bar really high. And I have a boundary, almost a limitless boundary for me. Like, I don't cap it. I put it, why was I doing that? And it's because I think all the years I thought I had to compete with sighted people. I thought I had to be something, or be more something, or make more, because I need you to know I'm not a loser. Now, I don't think I'm a loser anymore, but you said it earlier. It's programmed. It was a conditioned way that I did things. So when I went at things, I set the bar really high.
Yeah.
It had to be perfectly adjusted, cleaned, and had to work a certain way, whatever the project or the thing I was doing. And a lot of that worth, like if I didn't hit that mark, then I felt those waves of self-pity and depression come back into my life.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, what is triggering this? Well, did you ever consider lowering the bar? If you can't pole vault 10 feet 6 inches, did you think maybe going down to 9.2 and try to clear that and do that successfully every day for a while? Then you maybe raise the bar a little. But if you're always trying to hit a certain 12 feet and you can't do it and you just start giving up, or you start blaming, complaining, rationalize, justifying, defending why life sucks, and making excuses all day long, we think you don't have boundaries.
I like that about lowering the bar and trying that on for size. You know what that reminds me of, Charlie? The first time I started getting comfortable with saying, I don't know. I don't know. And the world didn't stop spinning. I don't know. Or asking for help, right? It's, lowering the bar to something that you can achieve and at the same time experience comfort. Like, you're not super achieving. You're not throwing yourself out there. You're not driving yourself crazy. You're doing the best that you can. That's really lowering the bar, is doing the best that you can, not how you think you should be doing. I should be doing X, Y, and Z. I should be putting in 10 hours or 12 hours a day like the guy next to me does. No, that doesn't work for me. So the bar is what really works for you. And so part of being able to recognize what works for you is you have to take the time to get to know yourself, to just observe, how do you feel when you're shooting for the stars in whatever it is that you're doing? How does it really make you feel inside? Are you all excited about doing that? Or are you feeling under pressure? Is your blood pressure rising? Is your heart racing? Are you reaching for sugar and snacks to get through the day, right? These are all little things that can tell you whether or not this is working for you or not, to pay attention to how you're responding to the environment. Most of us don't even stop to pay attention to how we are reacting and responding to the environment. We just kind of blow through the day. Do you ever sit down when you used to work for companies, you sit down, you start going, and the next thing you know, it's like noon, it's time for lunch. So where are you during that time? You're just doing. And when you're just doing what Bruce Lipton calls that, he's like the father of epigenetics. He said, when you're just doing like that, your subconscious brain is running the show. That 0 to 7 years of programming is running the show because you're not paying attention. When you're not paying attention, that's running the show. And boy, that's a scary show for me when that's what's running it.
Yeah, and the bar, again, is basically boundary. It's a boundary.
It is.
It's nothing more. It's just I can see it, but I realize that it has to have one on the side, each side, and the bottom. It doesn't mean I need to live in a box. It means I operate well, knowing self as I go through the day, as I go to a certain party. You know what I mean? It's just sometimes there's all different kinds of people and attitudes, and there's toxic people, and there's joyful people, and there's people that aren't afraid to say, I don't know, and I'm figuring this out. And there's all sorts of people. There's awake people that are present, people that aren't full of anxiety and stress, and they know they can do what they can do in a day. And I didn't know all that. And it doesn't mean I know all that either at the same time. I trust my senses. I trust that it doesn't feel right. It doesn't smell right. It doesn't taste right. It doesn't sound right. And each of our senses activates different centers of our brain, our visual cortex, and this is this is what really develops our self-respect and the character of us. And I've been really honing in on senses lately. And I tell you, I was working on a chainsaw. And what does this have to do with a boundary? Well, I do it the way I do it. And I'm working on it, but I'm not looking because I don't need to. Why? Because my hands do the looking. They're sending the information from my fingertip to my brain and creating an image. So I know what I'm doing. And as somebody working or might be like, they want to get in, they want to take charge, they don't understand. Let me do that for you. Let me show you, let me help. And it's like, I am perfectly doing fine inside my boundary that works for me. And and I get it. It doesn't make sense to somebody, but I trust and rely on these senses and the guidance of my internal system, that the flow of my day, the flow of my relationships, and my impact I'm making, something's working when I'm within the guidelines of the approach that I want to take to move through the day. And it's not selfish. It's not I'm thinking of me only. It's not that I'm more important than you. It's none of that.
Mm-hmm. So we're starting to get into more of the relationship boundaries. And this is a really good segue into that. You know, there's some beautiful tools that I have learned in how to navigate relationships that I had no idea about before I started learning about all of this stuff and doing the work. And the work for me started with inventorying my disturbances. And that's where all of my squishy boundaries came up. Like, oh, I'm not having boundaries here. I'm not having boundaries there. If you're not having boundaries at work, you're probably not having boundaries in personal relationships either. It's kind of a mindset. So I was with somebody the other day and they were sharing a situation with me, right? And they said, what do you think about that? So they asked me a direct question. What do I think about that? And I answered the question. And then they started arguing with me about my answer, right? And I said, okay, that's it. I said, okay. Like I did not engage with the argument because, you know, and this is part of what comes into your awareness when you start practicing boundaries, is you start to see the hooks that people throw out. Like, this person wasn't looking for my advice. Clearly, they were not looking for my advice. They were looking to engage in some kind of debate because they really wanted what they had just said, what they had just explained to me. They really weren't looking for feedback. And so when I said, okay, they were kind of offended. And I asked, well, why are you offended? Well, why did you just say, okay? I said, because I don't need to be right. This is your decision to make. This is your experience that you're talking about. I don't need to give you a different suggestion for an experience that you're not open to hearing. It's just, and it was no judgment there whatsoever. And I had a second conversation with someone this week who asked me what I thought, you know, do you think this is right? And I told them this had to do with something technical. And I told them, and I had the same experience. They started arguing with me about it. And I said, you know what, you're right. It's a great idea what you just put out there. It's a great idea. And that was the end of the conversation. So I don't engage anymore in conversations with people that they really authentically don't want to have. And you pretty much, and your senses, like you were talking about, let you know that. Because when a person is resistant to hearing feedback on something that they've asked you for, that tells you they're really not interested in the feedback, or they're not ready for it, or their motive for asking you for feedback was maybe something different. So I don't need to be right anymore. If I have an opinion that they don't like, I'm fine with that. I can agree to disagree and just let it go. And the other thing I found in dealing with people, because you and I coach people, that we do that a lot. It's full-time jobs for us. So we coach people. And so we have to have this dynamic of being able to navigate all kinds of personalities. And one of the things that really work is to actively listen and to reflect back, to mirror back to them what they've just said to you by saying things like, you know, I hear that you just said, and you repeat what they just said. So when you do that with somebody, it deactivates that fear center. So a lot of people, when they're sharing something with you, might be in an activated state, right? Because that's why they're sharing it. They need someone to talk to about it. And when you reflect back to them what they've just said to you, it takes them out of that fear-based state because they feel heard. Oh, they understand. They heard what I said. They're listening, right? And it brings their brain waves down to a more malleable place, if you will. And then the conversation goes on. So active listening, mirroring back what they've said, validating what they're saying, especially if you're in an argument with somebody. One of the best things you can do is validate them, even if you disagree. You don't have to agree with someone to validate how they're feeling. I hear that. That must be so hard. What a difficult experience. I feel your pain. You don't have to agree with it, but at least the other person feels like you understand them. And that opens up a whole new world for them to be able to connect with you, because you can disagree and still understand how and why they're feeling that way.
So saying like, oh, that sucks for you probably isn't a good thing.
No. That's not going to get you anywhere, Charlie. Or you're wrong. Or no, that's not the right way.
That's the stupidest thing I heard all day. And I hear you. And you talked about activation. We have a threshold. We have a vital sixth sense, right? And it's a spiritual energy. It's hard to deny once you tap into it. and so when we're in there and we're harmony is operating in between senses, in between, there's some harmony going on. And you just, you talked about, it's so easy to be that person, Oh, I hear. So what you're saying is your left sneaker has been too small and there's a pebble in it, but you can't, you won't take the action to remove it. You know what I mean? Like you see the problem, but you're not willing yet to take the action. So I validate that. And I just say, I can relate. I had one in my right shoe, but, and then you say, but what happens is when we don't do that, or they're already activated. You mentioned the word activated, and just for people, activated means there's a threshold we operate in life. And when we pop over it, we drop into a lot more self-will. We start basing decisions out of anger. We base decisions that we want to be right and you're wrong. Something happens. We all know that anger, that mind that says things that I wish I didn't. Dang it. And Brendy, what you're saying is we know the person's up there and we just help bring them back down.
Yes.
Where they have the sense, they have the willingness to look at and be a part of a conversation.
Yes.
And it is possible to feel better, do better, and think better from this situation that we're discussing, right? So
yes.
And that's where we talk about activation. Activation could also be our nervous system and things that we will get into throughout the many weeks ahead of this podcast.
Yes.
But I just wanted to, because I wouldn't know what activated means. Like I'm activated, but I do now because I know when I am activated. You and I are people that once activated, maybe we stay in it, but then we realize it and we do something to bring it back down. Sometimes I can do it on my own by some breathing, some getting back in behind my boundary, noticing I stepped over. I wanted to fix something. I wanted to control the situation. And then I realized I've activated, you're activated, and together that is not pretty.
No, it's not. So I want to thank Trish. She said it's anger is blinding, and she likes us explaining activated. So activated when we're in a triggered state, when we're afraid, when we're not feeling safe. And the reason why we're talking about this is because you are not going to be successful in setting a boundary with anybody when you're activated. You're also not going to be successful at respecting boundaries when you're activated. You can't set a boundary with someone who's activated. You can't maintain boundaries when you're activated. Yep. So the other thing, especially in working with couples, right? When even in personal relationships that I've had, when I'm in an argument, or in the past when I've gotten triggered in an argument, nothing good happens in that state. So what we've learned really works is to keep the responses in the I state. Like instead of saying you did that and it hurt my feelings, I don't feel loved when you behave that way. I don't feel loved when I experience rejection. I don't feel loved when you don't show up for our date on time. So you keep it in the I, because the minute you say the word you, the person's going to get activated, like justify, attack, defend, and explain. When somebody is justifying, attacking, defending, or explaining, they're in their little child. They're in their inner child. They're not in their adult. Okay. They're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to stay safe. They're trying to, they're hurting in that moment. They're frightened in that moment. They're activated in that moment. And they can't hear those things. But if you keep it in the I, which is to not activate them, and you don't start pointing fingers, I don't feel, it changes the conversation. So you have the active listening, you have the reflecting back of what the other person is saying, you keep it in the I statements instead of pointing the finger. And there's probably a good opportunity that both of you will remain deactivated. And it's in that state that you can set healthy boundaries. And when you're setting a boundary, it's important to explain why. Yeah. So if I say, I don't feel loved when this happens, well, why don't you feel loved when this happens? And if you explain, well, this is what my childhood was like, and this is what it feels like for me when that happens, I'm really working on it. Do you know what I mean? It's completely different conversations can happen in that way.
No, I do. And then it's like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I have no problem working in that boundary with you. And wow, thank you for sharing that way, because this is something I was not seeing because I was thinking differently. And it's like, and I say that's a really good way to look at it. Thank you. That's something I would never have said in the past. My thinking was that's a stupid way to look at it.
Because it's not my way.
Right. I mean, how dare you think differently than me? That's so dumb. Oh my God. Charlie's Boundaries. That's going to be my next book.
Right. So Trish says, don't make decisions or take actions when activated. And that is dead on. How many times, Charlie, have we had a kerfuffle, I like to call it, a kerfuffle with somebody? And 24 hours later, we're thinking about it. And we're like, oh my gosh, how did I get so upset? Why did I get so upset? Why is that such a big deal? Like the next day when I'm not activated, I'm like, oh no, because you're not in your right mind when your amygdala, your fear center is activated. You're in protect mode. You're in, the caveman running from the bear mode. It's like, it really is that experience.
And thank God we have that in us. Mm-hmm. But we pull it when it's not supposed to be activated quite too often. There's people that are almost 24. I mean, they don't sleep well. They're in it throughout the day, and your body's going to break down because that's a temporary state to protect us. Yeah. But life worse lived, I always say life best lived is life by design. Mm-hmm. And that is not, that is, well, I don't want to go too deep into that, but I want to tell you, once I was having an argument with Molly.
You can say her name.
I know. She's probably not listening because they're at a tag sale. But anyway, I was, whatever. And I'm right. She's right. I'm right. She's right. I'm right. Okay. And it's like, now it's like you said, I'm protecting. I'm threatened by this predator in my house, and I'm going to dominate this. And the phone rings. Hello. Hey, how are you? Hold on, I got to finish winning. But it was amazing. I'm like heated, and then the phone rang, and I was okay. Hey, what's up, man? I wouldn't dare want you to know it. I'm in a shouting match. And then those would turn into storm away. And before I slammed the door, get the last word in, shut the door, don't hear you. And it's like, that is so mature. But that's the best I can do when I'm activated. Yeah. When I've lost control of my own mind.
Yeah.
I am now getting, and you were saying the inner child. I'm like, you know what you could do with that inner child? Kick it in the ass.
No,
You know what
Charlie,
I
I
mean?
love on it.
And you're like, we got to look at that. That we got to nurture that. We got to see, because we got to then notice that that guy that was diagnosed at a young age with an eye disease and declared legally blind at 13. In that trauma, that guy has made lots of mistakes in his older years of life. And I found that out. And I tied it up, and I saw where it was, how it was affecting me, when all along I didn't think, I thought, what, it didn't. Oh, yes, it did.
Yeah, of course it did.
Oh, Trish said, anger is what? Blindness? No wonder
Blinding.
no wonder
Blinding.
I can't see. Ha ha ha. That's not the truth.
So you know what, Charlie, you talked about winning and being right. And one of the things that I try and do, well, two things I want to say. Before I say that, one of the things that's really helpful is your body will tell you that activation is beginning if you pay attention to your body. It's somatics is what it's called. And so your body's an antenna. So it receives the energy from the other person before your brain even has time to process it. Right. So when you start to get activated, if you start paying attention to your body, like I usually feel it in my solar plexus, right above my belly button, right? It just kind of feels funny, like not necessarily butterflies, but I feel a sensation there. That tells me I'm getting activated. So I know instantly that I need to do something that's grounding, whether it's the breathing exercises that we've talked about, or just walking away, going into a different room, getting away from that energy for 10 minutes and coming back into the conversation. These are all things that I've learned to do when that alarm system goes off. I pay attention to my body. And the other thing is, if you play the tape forward and you think about it and you just say, okay, I'm right. Let's just assume in this disagreement that I'm right. Okay, so does that help at all in the conversation? No, it doesn't help that you're right. It doesn't matter that you're right, or that even if you're not right, if you believe you're right, you play the tape out. Okay, you're right. And how does that help the other person? How does it even help you to be right? It doesn't. It doesn't matter who's right. That's why you're arguing, because you can't agree on who's. It doesn't matter. So assume you're right. Now, how can you be of service? How can you lower your bar a little bit and help the other person raise their bar a little bit so you guys can meet in the middle? That's really the game we're playing here. And in the middle is where the boundaries can be set. By expressing, this is how I feel when I experience whatever it is that you're arguing about, or whatever it is that got you activated. This is what I experience. So it's not even you. This is my stuff I'm experiencing, and it happens when this kind of event happens between us. It's a different conversation than you did that to me, and now it's your fault I'm feeling this way. First of all, no one can make you feel anything. No one can make you feel anything. They can expose what you already feel about yourself. And that's to say they can trigger old trauma, which is, 9 times out of 10, when I'm having a disagreement with somebody, whether it's because I haven't set a boundary or they're not respecting a boundary, I'm being triggered. I'm responsible for my triggers, not the other person. Because none of it's ever personal. They're thinking about, who are they thinking about 98% of the time, Charlie? Themselves.
Yeah, I was going to say, not me.
Yeah, they're not thinking about you, no. And it's human nature to think about yourself first. Survival. It's an instinct. It's an instinct to think about yourself first.
So I guess it's I'm rubber and you're glue. What you say bounces off me and sticks to you.
Yes. That's exactly how old we are when we get into these kerfuffles.
Well, I mean, it's such. I mean, you want a goal. You want something and aim a little higher in life, something to strive for. Just know that absolutely nobody can make you feel. Nobody can make you anxious. Nobody can make you angry. Nobody can make you happy. Now, doesn't mean Doesn't mean having a life partner and you just joy and you experience pleasure and things are great. But it does mean that it's not anyone else's responsibility to make me feel good. And it's never been anybody's, no one has ever been responsible for making me feel angry.
Right.
But like you said, what it did is activated something unresolved in me. So it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. Oh, I'm getting irritated with this conversation, and I'm going to, teach. I'm going to control this. I'm going to teach that you people are just nonsense. You're talking, you don't even know what you're talking about. You're just blabbing, and I need to fix this. But what in me, why am I starting to get triggered? What is happening? And Brenda, I feel it in my face. I start to feel like somebody's behind me pulling on my skin. And I know, and do I have the power to take a breath, walk away, walk into a bathroom and take some breaths and recalibrate and come back out into that event and that environment and be okay? Yes. Do I do it always? No. Am I gotten better at it? Yes, because it never works out well when I want to be right or control or end on my note.
Right. And so now we're talking about boundaries with self.
Yeah.
We're talking about how to calibrate yourself and have discipline with your own feelings and your responsibility for your own feelings in any given situation, and have some boundaries with that. Because really, it all begins and ends with you. You may not have gotten the ball rolling. Sometimes you get the ball rolling. But even at times when somebody does something that truly is offensive, you always have a choice whether to attach meaning to what somebody else has done or not. We attach meaning to it. And when we attach meaning to someone else's behavior, that's when the suffering starts. I'll never forget, and I've told this story before, but it's worth repeating. I had a really abusive childhood, and I was working with my coach on getting rid of some of those resentments. And one of the things she said to me was, because my father was very violent, she said, if you took yourself out of the room and put anybody else in there, would your father have behaved any differently? And I'd never thought about that before, because I'd always personalized it. He's doing this to me. He doesn't love me. I'm not lovable. There must be something wrong with me. And when I thought about that question, I said, no, like he beat us all. He didn't just beat me. He beat us all. And she said, then it wasn't personal. It wasn't personal. And it blew my mind to think about that event in that way, to think about it differently. Yeah.
And keep saying that, and that I don't mean you, I mean us, and those who are watching, listening, who are here live, who are watching this as this becomes a ranked video on the YouTube platforms and all the different areas we post this. It's, if I took me out of that and it was something else, could that situation, that person have acted, could that event have happened the way it did? Yes.
Yeah.
So did it have to do with me? No, you were just there. Now, later in life, that's different, but we're talking about where some of this, the root of this struggle could come from, when we get activated because of others' words. Now,
right.
we don't want to put ourselves in that position to be hurt. So we don't want to put ourselves around people that are a bit toxic or, self-willing, a little angry at times, who are kind of, full of self, really narcissistic. I got to get my way all the time. Our manipulators, because we don't want to have to practice our spiritual principles all the time. But Brenda, you said something like, I feel that it's a spiritual sense. Like, where do we feel, like in our bodies and all? I believe it's my spiritual center that first receives that information. You say it's an antenna, and I know what you mean, and I know that. I shouldn't say I believe it. I know it. because I know, because I've experienced. So when I initially feel that disruption in my body, something has, it's like, you're going along in the boat and whoa, you hit a wave. Whoa. Where did I feel that come? I mean, when did that come in? How did that disrupt my spiritual knowingness, that vital sixth sense? And am I going to take responsibility in this moment? You don't have to think of all this. It becomes natural. Like, oh, there it is. Oh, let me take a breath. It's not like hold on, you guys, I got to pull out my notebook. Okay. Step 1, step 2, then do a 30-minute yoga session, call 14 people and explain it. Forget about it. That's not what we're talking about.
No, it's your early warning system goes off. That's your body. The early warning system goes off, and you just learn for your own well-being to respond differently. That means, uh-oh, right? So what do we do when we hear an uh-oh, right? We go and get centered again. It's really that simple. And it kind of does happen naturally. So,
any more chats you got to look at?
Yes. I wish everyone understood that no one can make them think, feel, or act in a certain way. Yeah. No one's that powerful. And thank you for that reminder. A lot of people talking about bad energy. That's a really good point when you're around bad energy. Let's talk about that for a minute when it comes to boundaries. So we talked about boundaries with work. We talked about boundaries in relationships. We talked about boundaries with self. Now, what about those people? And it's Trish who's talking about bad energy. Thanks for that. That are kind of impenetrable when it comes to boundaries. I've had some experiences, right, Charlie, with that. With people. So what do you do with somebody who is not respecting boundaries?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share on it, but I'm asking you.
I would terminate the relationship.
Just come right out with it, Charlie. Exactly right. You walk away. And it's not, one of the things I learned, and this was a hard pill to swallow, is that person isn't necessarily, it's a podcast and we can't do any kind of foul language here, but they're not saying, screw you, I'm not respecting your boundaries. I have found that's what I used to think. Oh, that person's just a loser. They're not, they don't care about me, or, I would personalize it, right? What I've come to understand is they're not capable. They are incapable. It's almost like a person's been writing with their right hand all their life, and I'm giving them a pen and saying, you have to write with your left hand now. They're not capable. And that was a hard pill to swallow, because I'm capable. When somebody says, that really hurt my feelings, or that was insensitive, or, this behavior really bothers me, I'm the first one to be like, oh, wow, man, thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to work on that, because not necessarily because I want them to be happy, but I want to be the best me I can be. And 9 times out of 10, when someone is bringing me something, they're right, because I'm open-minded to it. But the person that isn't, I have found, isn't capable. They cannot do it differently. And so there's a lot of relief in understanding that it's not about me. They just can't do it. My father could not have behaved differently. He wasn't capable.
And we're going to definitely do a podcast on energy sometime, because and one of the big books, the big book, shoot, I gave it away. But anyway, it says, it's not what can we take from the occasion. And that's when I have a bad energy, when an energy of, I'm here, everybody notice me, come say hi to me, and tell me why I'm here, making me happy, make this a good occasion for me. It doesn't say that. It says, what can we bring to the occasion? And I definitely have puked my bad energy out around in environments, around people, grumpy, and darn it, that stuff I regret. It's like, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be inspirational and, happy, joyous, and free. And I get it. That's not a permanent state. It takes work. But Yeah, well, I definitely want to talk because energy in motion is the game of life, really. I mean, that's all it is. Everything is energy, and we're a part of that everything. And when we align with that, and we have the energy to get up and live life, uh, gosh, I'm still blown away at what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now.
Me
And
too,
because I
Charlie.
only know my now 6 months ago, my now is better than it was back then. And I've had some heck of hard times, very difficult year with deaths and losses and traumas and resentment and anger and loss and lack of and I now today, as Brenda, you asked me in the beginning of this call, when we were getting ready, and we were aligning our energy. You asked me, I said, I'm feeling that I'm getting back more into the flow. I'm getting connected. I'm feeling content. I'm not fighting. I have stopped fighting anything or anyone, at least for this morning so far.
It's a great place to end, Charlie. This flew by. Maybe we should do another one on boundaries. I mean, we tapped into a lot today, and it was good. This was a good podcast for me.
And for me too. Hey, you know what? We can't keep it unless we give it away. And we give it through our coaching programs, through our podcasts, through group coaching on Time for a 10. And I will be launching a new website very, soon. I'm not telling you when because I haven't
can't wait.
but it's in process. I will be getting back out into the market, speaking and doing more, because the time is now.
The time is now, Charlie.
I'm aiming higher, I'm documenting, and I'm sharing the journey.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And peace out to all you podcasters.
Hope it's helped somebody today. Thank you to everyone who came. Thanks, Trish, for all the questions and great comments. Have a great weekend.
Yes, you too. Don't want to forget this before I go.
Course.
Please like, subscribe, and do whatever that says.
Share.
Bye-bye.